Have you been working from home? Wish you had a dedicated space to work from? In this episode, the Handyman Pros are going to discuss creating new office space. So we're going to give some creative ideas to help you create your ideal workspace, including some tips to optimize remote working, some of the technology issues, and some common sense approaches for multi-use space. Welcome to the Handyman Pros radio show, home improvement and maintenance tips from the pros. Thanks for listening to another edition of the Handyman Pros radio show, where our goal is to help save you time, money, and aggravation on your home maintenance and repair projects. This edition is entitled, So, You're Working from Home. To help me explain, I'm here with my ever-cheerful co-host and old buddy John. John, what's been going on this week?
Hey, Larry, greetings. This week, what's been going on? What hasn't been going on? But I've been doing a lot of work that we'll probably talk about coming up here. But I think you've been doing the same. But it's it was a busy week. As you know, the other week I was basically off. I took that week off and just did some things around here. But this past week has been fixing up some an older house that they're getting ready to make some decisions on. So we'll be talking about that. But in that, it was a young couple that had this house. It was an older home that would belong to their parents, and they were in their 30s or whatever, and they're working from home. And, and I thought, well, you and I started to talk about this a little bit, and everybody's working from home now because of the situation with this virus thing and the changing of thought in the business world.
Yep,
and people are just working at home. And
yep.
Yes. And everybody is kind of scrambling. I just noticed it. Everybody's kind of makeshift, and they're sitting around tables and
because
calls.
It makes sense, right, John? I mean, we've kind of so we're about roughly 6 months into this thing, and now it's starting to look a little more permanent, right? Where
sure is.
The face of business is changing. Working from home is now for example, my wife, she works for AT&T, and of course they're talking about July of next year before anybody goes back to any office, and this is tentative at this point. Even now, it's tentative. Depends on a couple of key markers, but that's a year out from from basically right now. This is the end of August when we're recording this, and that's almost a full year out. And now it's actually time that if your company is going to have you working from home, what kind of things would you do to actually set up a home workspace? And that's how that's really what we came up with for this idea. Is that about what you think, John?
Yeah, and I certainly can speak to this. I've been working from home in my profession for at least 15 years, when I was traveling for sales and all that kind of stuff. But, if you just get thrown into that and you have never worked from home before, it will kind of throw you for a loop. And it really does take a certain mindset to really be productive and feel good about working from home. I know a lot of folks, when they said, I can never work from home because I'm always distracted, I always want to do something else. And I think that's obviously, as a manager, that's the fear that we always had, right? Is, what are you doing at home? Other than that, you just get into it though. You got to have that mindset. And I think that's what we'll talk about today is, how creating that mindset of working from home and feeling, feeling professional, in an environment that creates that, that mindset of being productive.
Right. And some of those, it's fun. I'm glad you mentioned that you've been doing this for about 15 years, and I've been doing it on and off for probably about the same amount of time. And I say on and off, I've worked in a couple of different jobs, and so therefore mostly they were outside sales types positions. And so I didn't go into the office unless I absolutely had to, because I always found the office to be a waste of time for my situation.
Right, and a distraction. And the only time I would want to go into the office is, I'd be meeting with my boss, or meeting with some of my other team in a quiet conference room environment where we could work together face to face.
Right.
But other than that, I always found the office as a distraction for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm much more productive at home than I would, than I am in the office.
Yeah, I personally, I've always been kind of oriented towards being mobile and in the field, but that meant working out of the car, and it's really
Right.
one and part and parcel of the same thing. So these are some of the things that we wanted to kind of bring out, and we're gonna tailor this. Obviously, we're the Handyman Pros radio show, so we're going to talk about things you can do in your home to actually give you that. What would we call it, John? Professional space, I guess. The feeling of being professional. I guess
That's
at
correct.
this point.
Right.
So, John, one of the first things I know for me that's really, really important for me to have a dedicated space that I consider to be my quote office. Right? Do you find that to be the case?
Yeah, that's exactly the thing. When I first started to, and I'm going to just draw on my experience here because I know a lot of people out there. If you've just been thrown into this, you're gonna relate to it. When you're just thrown into it, you think that, I grab my laptop or, whatever, and I'm going to head down to the kitchen table and set up shop. Boy, I'll tell you, I know some people that might do that. I could never do that. That was not me. I felt like I was, in my house. It was, I just
Right.
didn't feel professional. And I keep using that word, but you want to feel that way, like you are in an office. And I had to have a dedicated workspace. And I think, as we go into this show, I think when we talk about this, there's going to be a couple of variations of this. Some of the folks out there are going to have, smaller places that they live in, that they might not have a be able to have a dedicated room,
Right.
per se. And then there's going to be the other folks that have, the big homes or whatever, and they've got the basement, so they've got a place where they can actually build it into a permanent type of an office environment, with everything they need. So, yeah.
And that's exactly, I think it's a perfect way to go about it. I know for myself, I've always had to have a dedicated space. Personally, I work in my studio here. We call it the studio now. We kind of laugh. It's a big closet. It doesn't even have any windows. I'm one that's very prone to external stimuli, so I don't like to look out windows because there's a bird. Oh, there's this. Oh, there's that. It just distracts me. So I personally work best in a thing. And part of it is, I guess, is that, each person has their thing, right? But one thing that is an overriding thing, and there's a lot of this in the media and in the internet right now about when you're talking about working from home and tips to work from home and things. But one of the definite things is a separation of space. And you just said it, John. You felt like you're at your home. Well, my wife, she was working off the kitchen table, but she felt like she never was away from work because she was looking at her computer all the time. So we just recently set her up in the extra bedroom as her own office now. I mean, it's back to a multi-use space, and we're going to talk about multi-use space, both in small space and or larger spaces. If you've got a basement that's unfinished and you want to finish off, we're going to talk about finishing off a corner of your basement as an office, maybe more like a studio. We'll get into some of that because there's some technology things that you can do. But if you're taking an old bedroom or an unused bedroom or a guest room or whatever you want to call it, and you're changing that into an office, what are some of the things that you can do to keep that as a multi-use space as well? So we kind of wanted to talk about that. And I sort of think that's where we start, John. What do you think? That we start with, number one, what are you going to convert? What are you going to use as an office space, and draw the distinction?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, let's start at let's say that you're in a small place, maybe a condo, or you're renting. Maybe you've got a 2-bedroom or a 1-bedroom or whatever. And so sometimes this can be a challenge, because I think that story of your wife kind of always feeling like you're at work, and this will happen.
It does,
because you can create an environment where you cannot separate yourself from home and work. It all kind of starts to go together, and that's kind of when I kind of got crazy.
I was going to say, it'll drive you crazy.
That's kind of where
nuts.
Right. You can't get away from it.
Right.
And you need to have this ability, at least I do, and I know a lot of people do, ability to just sever that and say, okay, I'm home or I'm in the office, because you kind of lose your mind after a while, especially with the way they've got us, in some of this lockdown stuff that had occurred here. But, I liked your story of, what you did in in your condo, I believe, when you were living in the one spot. So why don't you tell us?
So we had a condo. We lived in Dallas, Texas, and we had a small condo. And again, it's just my wife and I, and the dog. And so we had a small condo. It was a 1-bedroom condo, and it had no dedicated space for my office. And so, but we did have this linen closet, and the funny thing is this linen closet was right across the hallway, basically, from where the laundry machine was, and there was tons of storage space in there. So we were kind of looking at this little linen closet going, what are we going to do with it? It really serves no function because we didn't need that much in the way of linens and things. So I converted that closet into almost a full-blown, kind of like a Murphy office, like a Murphy bed, it was all, I could close the door on that closet, and I even got my chair in there. Actually, it was one of my concerns to get the chair into that closet. And when I opened the door, I'd pull the chair out, I'd sit down, I had a desk, and the way I had my shelves stacked up, that's where I had all my stuff. And I had independent lighting in there so that I could light it, make it bright. I like a bright space to work in for myself when I'm working. So, and I had computer set up in there. I actually ran did I run a wire in there, or did I use wireless? I don't remember. But anyway, we'll talk about some of the technological things. But I had everything in there. It was a fully functional office. It fit in a closet. It was probably 3 feet wide, and it was 7 feet tall or so. Had a computer printer. Had everything I needed in that, and shelving and tape and all that stuff, folders and blah blah blah. Shut that door. Office was closed. I don't think we spent very much on it. I bought some shelving. I actually affixed the desk. It was funny. We were talking before the show, and you can go on Pinterest and come up with tons of ideas. There's a million different ideas on how to lay this stuff out. And the purpose of this show is not really to talk about that, but it's to talk about the fact that you can do it. You really can get this space built. I was going to flip the desk up, and I told you this before the show. I was going to actually have a flip down desk, and the determination of why I fixed my desk was actually fixed in that closet, and the reason it was fixed is my chair actually fit under it, and I could close the door. The minute I could close the door with it fixed, I was like, forget it. I'm not gonna have to flip
perfect.
up, right? Because it fit right in, and so. That was that, and I wired that thing up. I mean, I had it really, really nicely done. I had put wire hiders and all that stuff, so it really looked like an office. When you sat in there, it was literally, you felt like you were in an office. You just were it was just a small cubicle, right? That's basically what it was.
And I think that's brilliant. Actually, is that so for the folks out there, so here's one side of being able to be very creative. And create something for that professional feel, and from working from home, and it doesn't have to be all that extravagant. At least there's a great start, and I will say that, for me, the couple of things that really that I really found to be the must-haves. And the number one thing that must have is a good chair, for the office.
Yes.
Okay. A desk and a chair, and you have that surrounding and your own little space. And I think that's you're well on your way to creating a nice little cubicle type of environment. And I think that's a good way to put it. It's like a cubicle.
Yeah. It's its own. It's just its own. It does not necessarily have to be big. We were talking about desks beforehand, John, and it's kind of funny when we moved into our currently we have a condo also, and so we moved in that condo. I needed a desk really quickly, and I really wasn't in the mood to go desk shopping and all this stuff. Well, I had a 4-foot fold-up table, just a plastic table with the legs on it. Well. As of this recording, now that was 2.5 years ago, as of this recording, I'm still using that desk. And in fact, that is now the studio desk, which is my desk. And I actually have the boom arm now mounted to it. And I've got the soundboard here, and we've got the computer on it. This is still my desk. You and I were talking about, you said you use a church table for the same reason. Right.
Yeah, I still have the regular church set with the legs that fold up. It's a metal, the metal structure, the older ones.
Right.
I've got 2 of those, and Now I've got an executive desk in my office that I never use. I don't like sitting at it. I can't get anything done at it. I can't spread paper. I can't move around. It's just one of those things. I just, and I've been using 2 church tables, one for a credenza and one for my main desk for the last 15 years.
Yeah. And we mentioned this. Right.
Yeah, and I just never really. Every time I go to look for a desk, I just didn't want to spend all that kind of money. And the functionality was exactly the same. Now, does it look like a big? No, it doesn't. But then again, I'm not bringing people in here, and this is perfectly functional for me. For whatever this thing cost at the time, $25 or whatever
it is. Yeah.
And I've got a computer table to boot. But other than that, it's these things don't have to. Now, on this side of it, then, I do have a dedicated room,
right,
for an office.
So you brought up an interesting thing, and I want to touch on it because you just mentioned it, and I sort of forgot. You said, you don't really care what it looks like because you're working from home and you're not bringing clients into your home.
That's right. Not in my capacity or any capacity I ever had. So if I had to bring clients in, I'd always, when I met them, I'd obviously meet them in the office.
Right. Or in their office, right?
Or in their office.
Yeah. I mean, being in sales, that's what we do, right?
Yeah. So that's what I would always do. And I just found that I think the moral of the story is that whatever makes you productive, is what you go with. Now, I know that I go into a lot of people's homes as well as you do, and they have some of these offices that are, and we've built some of these things, but, they have some very nice furniture in there, which is great. I mean, it looks great. And I mean, the whole thing, it just wasn't me. Because I honestly, from a budget perspective, I really took all the money that I had, at the time when I was building this thing out. It was to put that any money was the number one thing. Is like shoes was the chair. You buy a good chair, because you're going to be sitting a lot. You're going to be standing. Now you guys, folks out there, you can buy standing desks.
Yep, sure.
Or you can be creative and make your own standing desk out of one of these things. Okay, so don't be afraid to do that too, because. Technology-wise, all your devices now have the cameras on them. Your iPads, your notebooks, and all that kind of stuff for your Zoom meetings, and everything's now is wireless. When I first started off years ago, everything had to be wired.
Yep.
Everything had to have a great big camera on it. Everything had to, even if you ever used it. So. Now you can, move around and all those nice things to do.
Yeah. But, so this kind of brings in, so we're rolling into some of the technology side, which we want to talk about. I just want to take a step back and talk about, so let's say you have to have a multi-use room. Let's say you're taking that spare bedroom, right? A lot of the times, in my opinion, this is my opinion, sometimes this is where using the folding tables really works. Because if you do have a house guest come, you can kind of fold your office up and sort of move it, or at least put it away for the weekend. And so a lot of this too, folks, is, I mean, you have to determine how much are you going to use it and what are your priorities are. And we talk about, this is basically this is kind of our shtick, for lack of a better word. We're all about pre-planning because it helps you save time, money, and aggravation. If you think these things through, you can kind of determine what it is you want to do. And we're not trying to push you one way or another. I just happen to have landed on this table. I love it because it's John, and John said it. I'm tall, right? I'm a tall guy. I'm a big guy. I have a tough time getting in under a regular desk. It's too small. It's too confining, I guess I want to say. For me. So this thing's perfect for me. Now you might hate it. And to your point, John, I was in an office yesterday, and the young man has a beautiful stand-up desk. He's got a very nice office. It's a dedicated room in his house. It's a beautiful office. And that's what he likes. And I was like, man, that's, I get it. And he's 25 years my junior, and he can stand all day. I cannot stand all day. Yeah.
Well, we stand basically because we stand all day anyway.
We stand all day anyway. Yeah, right. So with that said, determine your usage, and if it's dedicated, you can do more. I guess I want to say if it's a dedicated office, like if you have an actual, you're going to build out a closet, or you're going to build out part of your basement, or you're going to build out something that's dedicated space, then you can look at get a desk you really like, because if you're going to spend a lot of time there, you should. And I do agree with you on chairs. Chairs are really important. You got to have a really comfortable chair, and that's whatever is comfortable to you, on a very personal basis. One of the things too, so now I wanted to roll this kind of into the technology side of it, and talk a little bit about now, if we're really doing a lot of stuff via Zoom calls and things like that, aren't we kind of setting up a true studio? Do you agree with that, John? I mean, in some ways, you need to have the ability to make a studio.
Yeah, there's no doubt, and I think there's a couple of ways you can go overboard, okay, in doing some of this stuff because of the technology in Zoom or Skype or whatever you have, to blur the background, and then you can get creative and fun with green screens and all kinds of things in the back.
Yeah, sure.
But to the point I think that you're making is that you want a place where, the lighting is correct.
If you're doing video.
Okay. If you're doing video. Yep. Don't look like you're in the dark, or, like you're, it's
like you're in a closet.
You got a flashlight under your chin or something like that. And so you want the correct lighting, and you want a place without the distractions.
Yep.
And without the reverb of the sound bouncing around and
the walls.
inside everything.
Which is, of course, we're podcasting, so that's one of our favorite pet peeves, right?
And not everybody's going to have. And the other thing is, not everybody's going to have really nice microphones and things, and they're going to be talking through just the microphones on their computers, and those things do a decent job of noise canceling, but still you want to have it where it's not, you're not in a tiled bathroom at the airport or something.
And folks, you all know what that sounds like, right? It is, to me, it's very distracting. And I know to other people it's very distracting. So we wanted to give out some real simple tips and tricks to creating the studio, right? And sonically, John, right? So the room that I'm in, it's a long story, but when we first started recording this podcast, we had a mattress in here that we were storing in this room. And sonically, it was fantastic. Well, one of Stacy's sons came and got the mattress, took it out of here, and all of a sudden it sounded like I was back in that tiled bathroom. The sound was bouncing all over the place.
Yeah.
And in fact, we tried to record one of – folks, you don't know this, but we tried to record one. We're like, no, we can't. This isn't even going to work. So Larry, being the creative person that Larry is, Larry walks out to the truck and he finds a moving blanket that he had, just because I had it in the truck for moving various things, on the jobs and stuff. Came in, ran 2 sheetrock screws, hung that thing up. Guess what? That's what's on my wall to this day.
Yeah, and that's brilliant, because a moving blanket is very thick and it'll absorb all the sound.
Deadens the
folks,
sound.
It's things like that. Now you can invest in some specific things, or blankets like that are just it's great if it does the job.
It does the job, and it does it efficiently. And if we don't like the look, we take the 2 screws out and down it comes.
Exactly. So to get started. So I think that's another thing. We're talking about.
Yep.
A small space or a dedicated bigger space, but also to get started versus a permanent type of solution.
Correct.
So just to get started, these are some great ideas to make you professional sounding, and get take that distraction away of the sound bouncing around and everything, because when you sound good and you're doing all those kind of things, you're taken more professionally and seriously than you hear them now all the time. By the way, just as an example, you see this all the time on the TV these days. If you watch news, is that they're interviewing everybody now, and half of them are all on Skype. And it's just amazing to me that some of these national broadcasting or cable broadcasting companies can't give the people on the other end the tip. Hey, man, that sounds like garbage. because everybody's using earbuds and things like that, Apple earbuds, and it's like, come on, really. So
they work, but it's a question of how well they work. Like, John, we talk about this. Just you brought up microphones, and we're just gonna throw this one out there. So we're using some. They're not expensive, but they're not inexpensive. They were about $100. They happen to be ATR 2100s, which doesn't mean anything to you, but you can look it up. You can Google it and find them. But they're about $100. Now these are actually, they're not the greatest in the whole wide world, but for $100, they make a huge difference.
Yeah, they do.
And if you're going to go and they're USB compatible and all that kind of stuff, and it's kind of one of those things on the technology side. If you're going to build a home office and you want to sound professional, you can buy a decent microphone. And there's a million of them, so I'm not proposing any one over the other one, but there's a million microphones. They almost all, John, when we started the show, we were actually using ones that plugged into the side, and they sounded better than the ones on the computer. It's not a huge investment into making it
right.
To make
right.
It
even if
sound
you use
better.
yes, and even if you use like little lavalier mics that you can buy for $25 or $30, and that clip on, like you see,
yep.
Once again, you see guys, on the newscast using these type of things all the time. You can buy a cheap version of those things, and they work great.
Yeah.
But I think you're absolutely right. That's another thing to invest in, is a decent microphone.
Yep.
When I was in business, that was the one thing that always killed me was, when I was on these conference calls, you could barely hear people. It was awful.
Right.
Yeah. It's like, are you talking to me with your head in a fish tank, or? And it was really, or the toilet. It was really strange. But I think so. Just to kind of recap, I think it's creating that dedicated space, getting rid of the distractions, being professional, get the right lighting. Everybody's for the Zoom meetings, getting rid of all the bounce of the
sound
of the sound.
So I wanted to throw my lighting tip out. Can I throw my lighting tip out? So
throw it out.
Number one is when you're doing the lighting, it needs to be in your face, right? So it needs to be from ahead of you, not from behind. Don't try to light yourself from behind, right? Because you'll be in the shadow. So me being me again, I went out to the truck, and on the truck I had one of those clamp-on lights, right? I mean, you go buy them at Home Depot. I think they're like $4. But I had it because when you go to a job, and you know this, John, when you go to a job and you need lighting, you clamp the thing on and you plug it in, and it's put lights. It's got a metal cone shape on it, right? And it puts light onto your thing. Well, I happen to have one because I had one, and I can't remember what I was doing, but somewhere I was doing a Zoom thing. And I mean, I literally looked like I was in the closet because I'm in the closet, and the lighting in my office is not very good. So I took this clamp thing, and I happen to have an old tripod from a camera, and I clamped it on top of the tripod, turned the light on. It was literally blinding me. Looked great on camera, but it was almost a little too bright. Then I took just a piece of cloth, it actually happens to be a napkin, and I laid it over the top of that, and it muted the light out just enough to make it almost perfect. I mean, instead of investing in going and buying a bunch, you don't all of these things don't necessarily have to be super expensive. Use your gray matter, use the thing in between your ears. Think about it a little bit about what you're trying to do, and see what you've got sitting around the house that might work. And in this case, that worked for me. I'm not saying it's the perfect answer. If we were going in to build a studio for somebody, John, which we've actually done some quotes, and we expect to get some of these jobs, we will build in nice lighting that will have adjustable dimmers on it that'll allow somebody to actually control the amount of light that's in their face, for lack of a better word. But we'll do studio lightings. We can put we'll be able to put shades and mutes on it in the front and be able to do all that kind of thing so that they can actually customize it per day, per whatever's going on in their life, where they can change their amount of lighting and make it right. And same thing with like the sound, like soundproofing. So if we're building a studio, if we're going to take and dedicate a space down in our office, and folks, we tell you this so that if you're thinking about building an office, say in your basement or whatever, or even in another room, and you're actually going to do some construction, think about some of the things that go into it, right? So lighting, and then back to sound deadening. Like there's acoustical materials that you can buy that are no more expensive than drywall, but they deaden the sound. And that's something that you want to think about installing at least on one wall, just to keep that bounce out. Kind of thing. Same thing you said, using green screens and things. Gosh, you can have a pull down green screen if you need it. These are
right.
things
And
that
it's
you
a
would
good
put in.
And I think that's a great segue into this segment of now let's go full blown home office.
Right.
And I think those are some great tips that really make now when we're talking about a professional office, one that you're going to throw a couple of dollars into, but that this is probably your permanent office.
This is going to be a business investment, right?
Yeah,
it's an investment in your business.
Yeah, right. That's exactly right. And I think that's right. You get pull down green screens. You have the professional sound deadening, more professional lighting for those occasions when you're doing the Zoom calls, and the whole environment that is a secure type of an office environment.
Right. And making sure you have access to enough power, and make sure that you have, Wi-Fi, right? I mean, we talk about this, but if you have Wi-Fi in your house, make sure if you're going to be in the downstairs, the basement, or even, I guess really anywhere in your house, make sure you have a good Wi-Fi signal. You need a good Wi-Fi signal. I mean, I know that sounds simple and it sounds silly. It's not so simple, and it's not so silly.
It's not, and people that are going to work off of Wi-Fi need to really take a hard look at that ability for a solid Wi-Fi signal going down there. If you're not going to run cable, hardwire it down to an office.
Right.
Usually, if you do hardwire something, it's better because of the speed and the reliability and things like that. Wi-Fi has come a long way, and I'm not going to get into mesh routers and all those kind of things, but the new types of routers are something you might want to invest in, and you can go look that up, folks. But it's a way to keep the signal strong across a large space. But I think you're exactly right, Larry. Is that when you're creating these professional spaces, that you really need to really think these things out and plan it through, because you can have a really nice space that is your permanent office.
Yeah, and it's not even too from the construction side. It's not that much. It's really not any more money to do that. It's no more money than to do that and do it right, versus to do it and be thinking about it after the fact. Always costs more to do it after the fact. Always, always, always. And so, put in that time and figure it out. It's like you're talking about running hardwire. If you're building out a basement, run hardwire. It's going to cost you pennies when the walls are down. I mean, it's pennies. It's the material. It's the cost of the material and the staples for the guy to run it up to wherever it needs to go. And that's generally very nominal. Very, very nominal. Now, you put walls up, and all of a sudden it's a completely different game. It's a completely different game. You and I, we beat on these things kind of as dead horses, but you really do have to think these things through. Electrical outlets, right? Put in a lot of electrical outlets. Don't even worry about it. The cost is nothing in the front side. It's a ton after the fact, or you don't have the power to run whatever it is you want to run.
Right. Ugh. And the thing is, you're going to wind up having power strips laying all over the floor if you don't have enough outlets.
Exactly. And if you're doing a basement, if you're doing an unfinished space, it doesn't matter, basement, attic, whatever. You're doing a space where you're actually taking the walls down. Run all that wire. Do it now. You'll be so happy you did. It's just it seems so simple, and yet we see it all the time. We see it in old houses. You go to plug old houses, but new houses too. New construction. You go to plug something in. There's 2 outlets in a room. You're like, why did they put 2 outlets in this room? Put 4, put 6. It's like you're talking about pennies. It's pennies over the cost of the house. Anyway, I digress. John, how many of these jobs do you think you need to hire done versus, you can DIY them?
Well, once again, that would depend upon your skill level and what you're comfortable doing. When you do something that's what we just got through talking about, I mean, a real permanent type of office that's full blown type of thing, if you're really good at DIYing and you can build things out, well, good, have at it. But that's you're probably, a lot of people might be pushing up against I need to hire people to do it.
Check,
I need to, or I'm gonna kind of goof with this thing for a real long time.
Right.
So just get it done, and then you're done, and have it done right. Because you're talking about, in some instances, that you might be moving some plumbing, you might be doing some electrical.
Right.
Who knows where this thing can lead, but that's why you really need to plan out and kind of hire the right folks to do that job.
Is there anything we've missed, John?
No, I don't think so. I think I think we hit on from something simple and useful that creates a dedicated space so that you can enjoy the office type of environment and be productive versus your home, all the way to a fully dedicated, full-blown type of an office that you want to build. So I think that gives some people some ideas of how to start to create stuff if you just got thrown into this kind of new environment that's upon us.
That's upon us, and looks like it's here to stay for a vast majority of us. So one of the things, John, you and I talked about this a little bit about the show, but we wanted to send out an invite. So folks, we know that a lot of you have been out there, and so some of you, this is new, but some of you have been doing this stuff forever. And we really wanted some of your ideas on this, on working from home, and like on your home office stuff, and like what are the concerns? Did we miss anything that while we were talking about it? We really wanted some feedback from you. We'd like to revisit this same topic in, I don't know, it doesn't even matter, a couple of months. But please send us an email on that. That's questions@handymanprosradioshow.com with your ideas and what's been working for you. You could post it on our Facebook page too, and that's @Handyman Pros on Facebook. But any of those ideas that work for you, we'd love to put them out there to see what's working, because there's so many really great creative ideas that y'all are already doing. Like John and I have shared what we're doing, but that doesn't mean that's the be all end all. It's just some of the ideas, And so we really we want a lot of feedback from you on this one, because I think everybody's working from home at this point. Of course, John and I work out of the trucks pretty much, but we've always been that way. But that's just what it is. So. All right, John, anything else that I'm missing?
No, I think that's it. I think that's I just look forward to some of the feedback here, and so we can share that out with the other listeners.
So I was really wondering, the other day I got into this spaceship, landed in the front yard, and I got up into it, and do you realize they had their own dedicated office space in there, John? Now, I think I called you up, and I think we came over and we took that thing apart, didn't we?
Yeah, were they selling carpet out of that thing?
I'm not sure. Ladies and gentlemen, if you've enjoyed this podcast and have derived some value from it, here's 4 things you can do. 1, tell your friends about this podcast. 2, hit subscribe on your podcast player. While you're there, leave us a review. 3, subscribe to our newsletter by going to handymanprosradioshow.com and click on the subscribe button. We'll inform you of upcoming events, shows, and give you actionable tips for maintaining your home and property. And 4, send us an email with your questions to questions@handymanprosradioshow.com. That's handymanprosradioshow.com. That's our show for this week. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week on the Handyman Pros Radio Show.